We're going to go straight to our press review now. Israel's offensive then in Gaza continuing, the humanitarian situation continuing to deteriorate, and the Hamas-run health ministry has said that the death toll in the enclave has now surpassed 25,000. Leo McGuinn's been looking at that for us. A couple of articles highlighting just how bad things are on the ground.
Yes, Stuart, I want to start by showing you El País, a Spanish newspaper, this morning, highlighting that fact that the Hamas-run health ministry says that the death toll has now surpassed 25,000 since the 7th of October. But even more shocking, perhaps, they say, is that half of that number are children in 105 days of conflict. El País say that 1 in every 100 Gazans have been killed, just over 1%. And they compare that in scale and say if that was Madrid, that would be 70,000 people killed. They note that while it's difficult to find similar numbers in other recent conflicts, the available data indicates that more people are dying per day than in Iraq, Syria, or in the first month of the war in Ukraine. In fact, they have this striking graph to really illustrate that fact. You can see how far ahead of the others the Gaza conflict is. In Gaza, the civilian death toll reached 10,000 after just the first month of attacks. In Ukraine, it took a year and a half to reach that figure. I'll bring you another piece from the Wall Street Journal this morning, really highlighting how far the situation has deteriorated. According to this, there are around 600,000 people facing starvation across the globe, and 95% of that number are in Gaza. I talked about that death toll of 25,000. According to this piece, it could get a lot worse if famine were to set in, which is a real possibility in the next 6 months, according to World Food Programme. And they say nearly all Gazans are skipping meals every single day, Stuart.
Let's cross to the UK for this next story. Many of the front pages this morning, they're focusing on a major scientific breakthrough. Some positive news for once.
Yeah, some positive news indeed, Stuart. Quite exciting, actually. And this news makes the front page of several UK newspapers this morning. I'll start with The Times. It's a blood test that can detect early signs of Alzheimer's. The news that a simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's disease up to 15 years before any symptoms begin. This is the front of the Daily Express. They say a breakthrough brings us closer to a cure for the disease. Scientists in Sweden have taken a testing kit which is already commercially available, and they found that it can detect proteins in the blood which can cause Alzheimer's and start a build-up on the brain years before those symptoms begin to show. In a study of people in their 50s, 60s and 70s, the test allowed researchers to assess whether participants were very likely or very unlikely to develop Alzheimer's, and the test can detect the presence of proteins with an accuracy of up to 97%, so it really is quite a solid number. And looking at this piece in The Telegraph this morning, they call it a blood test revolution for over 50s. They say it could become a routine screening, much as the way for over 50s are checking for high cholesterol is these days. And more than 1 million people are expected to be living with Alzheimer's or dementia in Britain by 2030. And it's hoped that beginning early treatment could make it easier to tackle symptoms. Currently, 1 in 4 die before they receive any formal diagnosis. So that just goes to emphasise how important such a rapid blood test could be.
Yeah, it does sound like a major breakthrough, doesn't it? Let's change gears completely now. We're going to talk about a viral video game that's causing quite a stir.
Stuart, I'm sure you know all about this. If you haven't heard about Palworld...
No, I haven't.
You've been living under a rock.
Oh, I've been living under a rock then. Okay.
Let me show you this. So let me see if I can show you a little video clip from Palworld. So this came out over the weekend. It's a survival game. It's not too dissimilar to Minecraft. Players have to forage for resources to build new structures. You can also give your animal pals assault rifles, as you can see here. And as we can see in the Washington Post this morning, the game has really taken the world by storm. They call it 2024's first viral game. It sold an incredible 5 million copies in just 3 days, which has far outstripped any expectations. It's immediately become the most played game on the planet. It's made by an independent Japanese studio called Pocket. But there's been some real controversy around it. This is IGN, one of the biggest video game websites in the world. They've been accused of plagiarising Pokémon. Some of the models are almost identical, and Pocket Bear's community manager says that they've received death threats, as you can see there, over the similarities. However, they say that the game has cleared all legal reviews, and they say there's been no action taken by any other companies. So good news for you, Stuart, because you can go home and play Palworld. It's not going away any time soon.
Okay, I shall be there in front of my telly. Let's finish with some football. Another crazy day at the Africa Cup of Nations yesterday. Not so good for host Ivory Coast. Their tournament hosts, they're really hanging on by a thread of margin, aren't they, after a very humiliating defeat?
Yeah, I mean, Ivory Coast went into the tournament as one of the favourites. That's certainly not the case anymore. Thrashed yesterday 4-0 by Equatorial Guinea. I'll bring you Fraternité Matin, one of the Ivory Coast's biggest papers this morning. Very self-explanatory headline. They describe the performance as a debacle. La Voix Originale say that without a miracle, all is lost. And the reason they say that is because there is still a glimmer of hope. Ivory Coast still have a chance to progress. In this tournament, 4 of the best third-place teams progress, 4 out of 6. And because Ghana finished third in their group with less points than Ivory Coast, it does mean that the Ivorians have a genuine hope of progressing, but they rely on other results. And actually, the Patriots have a much more hopeful tone. This morning, they say discouragement is not Ivorian. You still have to believe, and the eyes of the nation are going to be on other results today and tomorrow, and they'll all be hoping that Ivory Coast can scrape through, albeit by the barest of margins.
Yeah, of course they will. It's always a shame when the hosts go out, of course. Leo, thanks very much, Leo, with the press review here on France 24. He'll be back in a few hours' time.